Welcome everyone. Welcome. I know, it's a bit exotic, I think, yeah. But I hope that you will like it. I just want to make sure that everything sounds good, that my microphone sounds good as well. Wow. Check 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2. There we go. So you should be able to hear me very well. Welcome to the first time that we are going to be reading. We are going to be doing 2 reading sessions today and tomorrow. Both reading sessions are going to be focused on The 1001 Nights, which is a collection of stories, Arabian stories, that a princess kept telling a king to basically not get murdered or killed in the morning. The way I want to do this is basically I want to go story by story. So I will read one of the stories and then I will read the next one. And in between the stories we can talk a little bit, I think. At the moment I just want to make sure that the audio is good and that you can hear me okay. That is loud enough. I can slightly increase a little bit more the gain. I think there's an issue here that maybe my microphone is not picking up everything. There we go. I'm just gonna check that the audio is all good on my end. Yes, good. So perhaps increase. You can hear me fine? Okay. Right. So, if it's night for you, then you can get cozy. If it's not night for you, then you can get cozy. These are some of my favorite stories, actually. I really like these tales. I think these tales were very cleverly told and they are very nice. Oh, there's a metallic bar in my seat. If you think that we should lose the music, just say it. I think maybe we should leave the music down and keep just a nice ambient sound like this. So you should be able to hear my voice. I hear myself slightly echoey, but I think it's just me. I think it's just me. But it should be completely fine, right? Right. we are going to start with is with one of the first stories actually. Some say it's chapter 1, some say it's not. But this shall be let me just get comfortable. This shall be chapter 1. It is the first night, and the chapter 1 also ends with part of the third night. So as I said, the princess was married to the king, and every night the king would marry a different woman, and the next morning he would kill them. However, the princess, Sherazade in English, I think it is, I'm gonna call her Sherazade. She told these stories to the king so he would be curious about the ending of each story. And she told the stories in such clever way that, I don't know where that's coming from. She told the stories in such ways that the king, did not even think about killing her for about, 1,000 nights. So this is the story of the merchant and the genie. It has been related to me, O happy king, said Sherazade, that there was a certain merchant who had great wealth and traded extensively with surrounding countries. And one day he mounted his horse and journeyed to the neighboring country to collect what was due to him. And the heat oppressing him, he sat under the tree in a garden and put his hand into his saddlebag and ate a morsel and a bread and a date which were among his provisions. Having eaten the date, he threw aside the stone, and immediately there appeared before him an Ifrit of enormous height, who, holding a drawn sword in his hand, approached him and said, "Rise, that I may kill thee, as thou hast killed my son." The merchant asked him, "How have I killed thy son?" He answered, "When thou atest the date, and threwest aside the stone, it struck my son upon the chest, and as fate had decreed against him, he instantly died." The merchant, on hearing these words, exclaimed, "Verily to God we belong, and verily to him we must return. There is no strength nor power but in God, the high, the great. If I killed him, I did it not intentionally, but without knowing it, and I trust in thee that thou wilt pardon me." The genie answered, "Thy death is indispensable, as thou hast killed my son." And so saying, he dragged him and threw him on the ground, and raised his arms to strike him with the sword. The merchant upon this wept bitterly, and said to the genie, "I commit my affair unto God, for no one can avoid what he hath decreed." And he continued his lamentation, repeating the following verses. "Time consists of 2 days, this bright and that gloomy, and life of 2 moieties, this safe and that fearful. Say to him who hath taunted us on account of misfortunes, doth fortune oppose any but the eminent? Dost thou no observe that corpses float upon the sea, while the precious pearls remain in its furthest depths? When the hands of time play with us, Misfortune is imparted to us by its protracted kiss. In the heaven are stars that cannot be numbered, but known is eclipse, save the sun and the moon. How many green and dry trees are on the earth, but none is assailed with stones, save that which beareth fruit. Thou doubtest well of the days when they went well with thee, and fearedest not the evil that destiny was bringing. When he had finished reciting these verses, the genie said to him, "Spare thy words, for thy death is unavoidable." Then said the merchant, "Know, O Ifrit, that I have debts to pay, and I have much property, and children, and a wife, and I have pledges also in my possession. Let me therefore go back to my house and give to every one of his due, and then I will return to thee. I bind myself by a vow and covenant that I will return to thee, and thou shalt do what thou wilt. And God is witness of what I say." Upon this, the genie accepted his covenant and liberated him, granting him a respite until the expiration of the year. The merchant therefore returned to his town, accomplished all that was upon his mind to do, paid everyone what he owed him, and informed his wife and children of the event which had befallen him. Upon hearing which, they all of his family and the women wept. He appointed a guardian over his children and remained with his family until the end of the year, when he took his grave clothes under his arm, bade farewell to his household and the neighbors and all his relations, and went forth in spite of himself, his family raising cries of lamentation and shrieking. He proceeded until he arrived at the garden before mentioned, and it was the first day of the new year, and as he sat, weeping for the calamity which he expected soon to befall him, a sheik, advancing years, approached him, leading a gazelle with a chain attached to its neck. The sheik saluted the merchant, wishing him a long life, and said to him, "What is the reason of thy sitting alone in this place, seeing that it is a resort of the jinn?" The merchant therefore informed him of what had befallen him with the Ifrit, and of the cause of his sitting there, in which the sheik, the owner of the gazelle, was astonished, and said, "By Allah, O my brother, but faithfulness is great, and thy story is wonderful. If it were engraved upon the intellect, it would be a lesson to him who would be admonished." And he sat down by his side and said, "By Allah, O my brother, I will not quit this place until I see what will happen unto thee with the Ifrit." So he sat down and talked with him, and the merchant became almost senseless. Fear entered him, and terror, and violent grief, and excessive anxiety. And as the owner of the gazelle sat by his side, lo, a second sheik approached them with 2 black hounds, and inquired of them after saluting them, seeing that it was a resort of a jinn. And they told him the story from the beginning to the end. And he had hardly sat down when there approached them a third sheik with a double mule, and he asked them the same question, which was answered in the same manner. Immediately after, the dust was agitated and became an enormous revolving pillar approaching them from the midst of the desert. And this dust subsided, and behold, the genie with the drawn sword in his hand, his eyes casting forth sparks of fire. He came to them and dragged from them the merchant and said to him, "Rise, that I may kill thee, as thou killest my son, the vital spirit of my heart." And the merchant wailed and wept, and the three sheiks also manifest their sorrow by weeping and crying aloud and wailing. But the first sheik, who was the owner of the gazelle, recovering his self-possession, kissed the hand of the Ifrit and said to him, "O thou genie, and crown of the kings of the young, if I relate to thee the story of myself and this gazelle, and thou find it to be wonderful, and more so than the adventure of this merchant, wilt thou give up to me a third of the claim of this blood?" He answered, "Yes, O sheik, if thou relate to me the story, and I find it to be as thou hast said, I will give up to thee a third of my claim to his blood." Then said the sheik, "Know, O Ifrit, that this gazelle is the daughter of my paternal uncle, and she is of my flesh and blood. I took her as my wife when she was young, and lived with her about 30 years. But I was not blessed with a child by her. So I took me a concubine slave, and by her I was blessed with a male child, like the rising full moon, with beautiful eyes and delicately shaped eyebrows and perfectly formed limbs. And he grew up by little and little until he attained the age of 15 years. At this period, I unexpectedly had occasion to journey to a certain city, and went thither with a great stock of merchandise. Now my cousin, this gazelle, had studied enchantments and divination from her early years, and during my absence she transformed the youth above into a calf, and his mother into a cow, and committed them to the care of the herdsman. And when I returned after a long time from my journey, I asked after my son and his mother, and she said, "Thy slave is dead, and thy son hath fled, and I know not whither he is gone." After hearing this, I remained for the space of a year within mourning heart and weeping eye, until the festival of the sacrifice, when I sent to the herdsman and ordered him to choose for me a fat cow. And he brought me one, and it was my concubine, whom this gazelle has enchanted. I tucked up my skirts and sleeves, and took the knife in my hand and prepared myself to slaughter her, upon which she moaned and cried so violently that I left her, and ordered the herdsman to kill and skin her. And he did so, but found in her neither fat nor flesh, nor anything but skin and bone. And I repented of slaughtering her, when repentance was no avail. I therefore gave her to the herdsman, and said to him, "Bring me a fat calf." And he brought me my son, who was transformed into a calf. And when the calf saw me, he broke his robe and came to me, and fawned upon me, and wailed and cried, so that I was moved with pity for him. And I said to the herdsman, Bring me a cow, and let this. Here, Scheherazade perceived the light of the morning, and discontinued the recitation, with which she had been allowed thus far to proceed. Her sister said to her, How excellent is thy story, and how pretty, and how pleasant, and how sweet. But she answered, What is this in comparison with that which I will relate to thee in the next night, if I live? And the king spare me. And the king said, By Allah, I will not kill her until I hear the remainder of her story. Thus they pleasantly passed the night, until the morning, when the king went forth to his hall of judgment, and the wizard went thither with the grave clothes under his arm. And the king gave judgment, and invested and displaced until the close of the day, without informing the wizard of that which had happened. And the minister was greatly astonished. The court was then dissolved, and the king returned to the privacy of his palace. On the second and each succeeding night, Scheherazade continued to interest the king by her stories, as to induce him to defer putting her to death, in expectation that her fund of amusing tales would soon be exhausted, and as this is expressed in the original work, in nearly the same words as the close of every night, such repetitions will in the present be omitted. There we go. That was the first night. Was it too difficult to understand? I think for the first night you realized what she's doing already, because she's building a story within the story. So now we have the story of the sheik who is talking about something that's similar to the same story than the original merchant. They all have stories. Yeah. I hope that my voice is not too difficult to understand today, and that you can kind of understand everything. Though the ID language has been too harsh. Don't worry, Max. We have tomorrow as well. He got Ifrit Extreme Solo. Yes, he did. It definitely says Ifrit. That's the actual name of it. Ifrit. Let me just drink some tea. Yada yada. I'll keep this one up for anyone who wants to listen to. And then tomorrow we'll follow up with the Spanish version. Everyone ready? We continue with the second night. Night number 2. When the sheik, continued Scheherazade, observes the tears of the calf, his heart sympathized with him, and he said to the herdsman, Let this calf remain with the cattle. Meanwhile, the genie wondered at this strange story, and the owner of the gazelle thus proceed. O Lord of the kings of the young, while this happened, my cousin the gazelle looked on and said, slaughter this calf, for he is fat. But I could not do it. So I ordered the herdsman to take him back, and he took him and went away. And as I was sitting on the following day, he came to me and said, O my master, I have to tell you this something that thou wilt be rejoiced to hear. And every word is due to me for bringing good news. I answered, well. And he said, O merchant, I have a daughter who learned enchantment in her youth from an old woman in our family. And yesterday, when thou gavest me the calf, I took him to her, and she looked at him and covered her face and wept, and then laughed and said, O my father, had my condition become so degraded in thy opinion that thou bringest before me strange men? Where, said I, where are any strange men? And wherefore didst thou weep and laugh? She answered, this calf that is with thee is the son of our master, the merchant, and the wife of our master. She enchanted both him and his mother, and this was the reason of my laughter. But as to the reason of my weeping, it was on account of his mother, because his father had slaughtered her. And I was excessively astonished at this, and scarcely was I certain that the light of the morning had appeared when I hastened to inform thee. When I heard, O genie, the words of the herdsman, I went forth with him, intoxicated without wine, from the excessive joy and happiness that I received, and arrived at his house, where his daughter welcomed me and kissed my hand, and the calf came to me and fawned upon me. And I said to the herdsman's daughter, is that true which thou hast said respecting this calf? She answered, yes, O master, he is verily thy son, and the vital spirit of my heart. O maiden, said, if thou wilt restore him, all the cattle and all the property of mine, that thy father hath under his care shall be thine. Upon this she smiled and said, O my master, I have no desire for the property, unless on two conditions. The first is that thou shalt marry me to him, and the second, that I shall enchant her who enchant him, and so restrain her, otherwise I shall not be secure for her artifice. On hearing, O genie, these her words, I said, and thou shalt have all the property that is under the care of thy father, besides, and as to my cousin, even her blood shall be lawful to thee. So when she heard this, she took a cup, and filled it with water, and repeated the spell over it, and sprinkled with it the calf, saying to him, if God created thee a calf, remain in this form, and be not changed. But if thou be enchanted, return to thy original form by permission of God, whose name be exalted. Upon which he shook and became a man. And I threw myself upon him and said, I conjure thee by Allah that thou relate to me all that my cousin did to thee and to thy mother. So he related to me all that had happened to them both. And I said to him, O my son, God hath given me thee one to liberate thee, and to avenge thee, and I married to him. O genie, I married to him the herdsman's daughter, after which she transformed my cousin into this gazelle. And as I happened to pass this way, I saw this merchant, and asked him what happened to him. And when he had informed me, I sat down to see the results. This is my story, the genie said. This is a wonderful tale, and I give up to thee a third of my claim of his blood. The second sheikh, the owner of the 2 hounds, then advanced and said to the genie, If I relate to thee story of myself and these hounds, and thou find it to be in like manner wonderful, wilt thou remit to me also a third of the claim of the blood of this merchant? The genie answered, Yes. And this is the beginning of the story of the second sheikh and the 2 black hounds. Then said the sheikh, Know, O lord of the kings of the Jan, that these 2 hounds are my brothers. My father died and left us 3,000 pieces of gold, and I opened a shop to sell and buy. But one of my brothers made a journey with a stock of the merchandise, and was absent from us for the space of a year with the caravans, after which he returned destitute. And I said to him, Did I not advise thee to abstain from traveling? But he wept and said, O my brother, God, to whom be ascribed almighty and glory, decreed this event, and there is no longer any profit in these words. I have nothing left. So I took him up into the shop, and then went with him to the bath, and clad him in a costly suit of my own clothing. After which we sat down together to eat, and I said to him, O my brother, I will calculate the gain of my shop during the year, and divide it exclusive of the principal between me and thee. Accordingly, I made the calculation, and found my gain to amount to 2,000 pieces of gold. And I praised God, to whom be ascribed all might and glory, and rejoiced exceedingly, and divided the grain in 2 equal parts between myself and him. My other brother then set forth on a journey, and after a year returned in the like conditions, and I did unto him as I had done to the former. After this, when we had lived together for some time, my brothers again wished to travel, and were desirous that I should accompany them, but I would not. What have ye gained in your travels that I should expect to gain? They importuned me, but I would not comply with their request, and we remained selling and buying in our shop a whole year. Still, however, they persevered in proposing that we should travel, and I still refused until after the lapse of the 6 entire years, when at last I consented and said to them, O my brothers, let us calculate what property we possess. We did so, and found it to be 6,000 pieces of gold. And I then said to them, We will bury half of it in this earth, that it may be of service to us if any misfortune befall us, in which case each of us shall take 1,000 pieces with which to traffic. Excellent in thy advice, said they. So I took the money and divided it into 2 equal portions, and then buried 3,000 pieces of gold, and of the other half I gave to each of them 1,000 pieces. We then prepared merchandise and hired a ship and embarked our goods and proceeded on our voyage for the space of a whole month, at the expiration of which we arrived at the city, where we sold our merchandise, and for every piece of gold we gained 10. And when we were about to set sail again, we found on the shore of the sea a maiden clad in tattered garments, who kissed my hand and said to me, "O my master, art thou possessed of charity and kindness? If so, I will requite thee for them." I answered, "Yes, I have those qualities, though thou requite me not." Then said she, "O my master, accept me as thy wife, and take me to thy country, for I give myself to thee. Act kindly towards me, for I am one who requires to be treated with kindness and charity, and who will requite thee for so doing. And let not my present condition at all deceive thee." When I heard these words, my heart was moved with tenderness towards her. In order to the accomplishment of a purpose of God, to whom be ascribed all might and glory, I took her and clothed her and furnished for her a place in the ship in a handsome manner, and regarded her with kind and respectful attention. When then set sail, and I became most cordially attached to my wife, so that on her account I neglected the society of my brothers, who in consequence became jealous of me, and likewise envied me and my wealth and the abundance of my merchandise, casting the eyes of covetous upon the whole of the property. They therefore consulted together to kill me and take my wealth, saying, "Let us kill our brother, and all the property shall be ours." And the devil made this action to seem fair in their eyes. So they came to me while I was sleeping by the side of my wife, and took both of us up and threw us into the sea. But as soon as my wife awoke, she shook herself and became transformed into a female genie. She immediately bore me away and placed me upon an island, and for a while disappeared. In the morning, however, she returned and said to me, "I am thy wife, who carried thee and rescued thee from death by permission of God, whose name be exalted. Know that I am the genie. I saw thee, and my heart loved thee for the sake of God, for I am a believer in God and his apostle. God bless and save him. I came to thee in the condition in which thou saw me, and thou didst marry me, and see, I have rescued thee from drowning. But I am an incest against thy brothers, and I must kill them." When I heard her tale, I was astonished and thanked her for what she had done. "But," said I, "as to the destruction of my brothers, it is not what I desire." I then related to her all that had happened between myself and them from the first to last. And when she had heard everything, she said, "I will this next night fly to them, and sink their ship and destroy them." But I said, I conjure thee by Allah that thou do it not, for the author of the proverb said, O thou benefactor of him who had done evil, the actions that he had done is sufficient for him. Besides, they are all events, my brothers. She still, however, said, they must be killed. And I continued to propitiate her towards them, and at last she lifted me up and soared through air and placed me on the roof of my house. Having opened the doors, I dug up what I had hidden in the earth, and after I had saluted my neighbors and bought merchandise, I opened my shop. And in the following night, when I entered my house, I found these 2 dogs tied up in it. And as soon as they saw me, they came to me and wept and clung to me. But I knew not what had happened until immediately my wife appeared before me and said, These are thy brothers. And who hath done this unto them? She answered, I sent to my sister, and she did it, and they shall not be restored until after the lapse of 10 years. And I was now on my way to her, that she might restore them, as they have been in this state 10 years. When I saw this man, and being informed of what had befallen him, I determined not to quit the place until I should have seen what would happen between thee and him. This is my story. Verily, said the genie, it is a wonderful tale, and I give up to thee 1/3 of the claim that I had to his blood on account of his offense. Upon this, the 3rd sheikh, the owner of the mule, said to the genie, As to me, break not my heart if I relate to thee nothing more than this. And this is the beginning of the story of the 3rd sheikh and the mule. The mule that thou seest was my wife. She became enamored of a black slave, and when I discovered her with him, she took a mug of water, and having uttered a spell over it, sprinkled me and transformed me into a dog. In this state, I ran to the shop of a butcher, whose daughter saw me, and being skilled in enchantment, she restored me to my original form and instructed me to enchant my wife in the manner thou beholdest. And now I hope that thou wilt remit to me also 1/3 of the merchant's offense. Divinely was he gifted, who said, So good, even on an unworthy soil, for it will not be lost wherever it is sown. When the sheikh had thus finished his story, the genie shook with delight and remitted the remaining 1/3 of his claim to the merchant's blood. The merchant then approached the sheikhs and thanked them, and they congratulated him on his safety and catch, and each went his way. But this, says Sherazade, it is not more wonderful than the story of the fisherman. The king asked her, And what is the story of the fisherman? And she related it as it follows. There we go. That is the ending of the first stories. Very, very good story. Yes, yes. Every story in the original book has like 1,000 notes as well, because there are so many words that we do not know. that they need to explain everything. So there's really like 1,000 different notes. How was the second story? Did you guys follow up? Did you manage to catch up everything? Was this one more difficult? I can't believe there's a female genie. Oh yeah, Genie G. It's kind of like a genie actually, yeah. Aye. There's many actually in the stories. There is a lot of magic, and there's a lot of not just magic but also like morals, ethics, do good, you know. She was trying to teach the king to be a good person after all. Yeah, the Genie G. That was chapter 1, which it was the beginning of the first night and ended in the middle of the third night. Now chapter 2 is quite long, I think. But I think the stories are probably shorter, if I remember correctly. Yeah. It's very relaxing. Because after a long day out, just sitting down and reading is actually really sweet. I feel like I'm gonna sleep very well tonight. Though shall we read upon the next chapter. The chapter that starts the story of the fisherman. I feel like tomorrow it will be also easier on me, because this is like difficult English for me. But I think no matter how difficult, we can still understand the basics of it. So, 始めましょう. This is the story of the fisherman. There was a certain fisherman, advanced in age, who had a wife and 3 children, and though he was in indigent circumstances, it was his custom to cast his net every day, no more than 4 times. One day he went forth at the hour of noon to the shore of the sea, and put down his basket, and cast his net, and waited until it was motionless in the water, when he drew together its strings, and found it to be heavy. He then pulled, but could not draw it up. So he took the end of the cord, and knocked a stake into the shore, and tied the cord to it. He then stripped himself, and dived round the net, and continued to pull until he drew it out, whereupon he rejoiced and put on his clothes. But when he came to examine the net, he found it in its carcass of an ass, or a donkey. At the sight of this he mourned and exclaimed, There is not strength nor power, but in God the high, the great. This is a strange piece of fortune. And he repeated the following verse. O thou who occupiest thyself in the darkness of night and in peril, spare thy trouble, for the support of providence is not obtained by toil. He then disencumbered his nest of the dead ass and ran it out, after which he spread it and descended into the sea, and exclaiming, In the name of God, cast it again and waited till it had sunk, and was still when he pulled it, and found it more heavy and more difficult to raise than the former occasion. He therefore concluded that it was full of fish. So he tied it and stripped and plunged and dived and pulled until he raised it, and he threw it upon the shore. When he found in it only a large jar full of sand and mud, on seeing which he was troubled in his heart, and repeated the following words of the poet. O angry fate, forbear, or if thou wilt not forbear, relent. Neither favour from fortune do I gain, nor profit from the work of my hands. I came forth to seek my substance, but I have found it to be exhausted. How many of the ignorant are in splendor, and how many of the wise in obscurity? So saying, he threw aside the jar, and ran out and cleansed his net, and begging the forgiveness of God for his impatience, returned to the sea a third time. And he threw the net and waited till it had sunk and was motionless. He then threw it out and found it in a quantity of broken jars and pots. Upon these he raised his head towards heaven and said, O God, thou knowest that I cast not my net more than 4 times, and I have now cast it 3 times. Then exclaim, In the name of God, he cast the net again in the sea. And he waited until it was still, when he attempted to draw it up, but could not, for it clung to the bottom. And he exclaimed, There is no strength, no power but in God. And he stripped himself again, and dived round the net, and pulled it up and raised it upon the shore. When he opened it, he found in it a bottle of brass filled with something, and having its mouth closed with a stopper of lead, bearing the impression of the seal of our Lord Suleiman. And the sight of this, the fisherman was rejoiced and said, This I will sell in the copper market, for it is worth 10 pieces of gold. He then shook it and found it to be heavy, and said, I must open it and see what it is in it, and then store it in my bag, just to sell it in the copper market. So he took out a knife and picked at the lid until he extracted it from the bottle. He then laid the bottle on the ground and shook it, that its content might pour out. But there came forth from it nothing but smoke, which ascended towards the sky and spread over the face of the earth, at which he wondered excessively. And after a little while the smoke collected together and was condensed, and then became agitated and was converted into an Ifrit, whose head was in the clouds, while his feet rested upon the ground. His head was like a dome, his hands were like winnowing forks, and his legs like masts. His mouth resembled a cavern, his teeth were like stones, his nostrils like trumpets, and his eyes like lamps, and he had dishevelled and dust-colored hair. When the fisherman beheld this Ifrit, the muscles of his side quivered, his teeth were locked together, his spittle dried up, and he saw not his way. The Ifrit, as soon as he perceived him, exclaimed, "There is no deity but God. Suleiman is the prophet of God. O prophet of God, slay me not, for I will never again oppose thee in word, or rebel against thee in deed." "O Marid," said the fisherman, "dost thou say Suleiman is the prophet of God? Suleiman had been dead 1,800 years, and we are now in the end of time. What is thy history, and what is thy tale, and what was the cause of thy entering this bottle?" When the Marid heard the words of the fisherman, he said, "There is no deity but God. Receive news, O fisherman." "Of what?" said the fisherman. He answered, "Of thy being instantly put to a most cruel death." The fisherman exclaimed, "Thou deservest for this news, O master of the Ifrits, the withdrawal of protection from thee, O thou remote. Wherefore wouldst thou kill me?" That is a very difficult sentence. Therefore, why you should kill me, basically. "And what requires thy killing me, when I have liberated thee from the bottle, and rescued thee from the bottom of the sea, and brought thee up upon the dry land?" The Ifrit answered, "Choose what kind of death thou wilt die, and in what manner thou shalt be killed." "What is my offense?" said the fisherman, "that this should be my recompense from thee?" The Ifrit replied, "Hear my story, O fisherman." "Tell it then," said the fisherman, "and be short in thy words, for my soul hath sunk down to my feet." "Know then," said he, "that I am one of the heterical jinn. I rebelled against Suleiman, the son of Daud. I and Sak the genie, and he sent to me this wizard, Asaf the son of I don't know how to pronounce this, Barkia, who came upon me forcibly and took me to him in bonds and placed me before him. And when Suleiman saw me, he offered up a prayer for protection against me, and exhorted me to embrace the faith and to submit to his authority, but I refused. Upon which he called for this bottle and confined me in it, and closed it upon me with the leaden stopper, which he stamped with the most great name. He then gave orders to the jinn, who carried me away and threw me into the midst of the sea. There I remained 100 years, and I said in my heart, "Whosoever shall liberate me, I will enrich him forever." But the 100 years passed over me, and no one liberated me, and I entered upon another 100 years. And I said, "Whosoever shall liberate me, I will open to him the treasures of the earth." But no one did. So when 400 years more passed over me, and I said, "Whoever shall liberate me, I will perform for him 3 wonders." But still no one liberated me. I then fell into a violent rage, and said within myself, "Whosoever shall liberate me now, I will kill him." and only suffer him to choose in what manner he will die. And lo, now thou hast liberated me, and I have given thee thy choice of the manner in which thou wilt die. When the fisherman had heard the story of the Ifrit, he exclaimed, O Allah, that I should not have liberated thee, but in such a time as this. Then said he to the Ifrit, Pardon me, and kill me not, and so may God pardon thee, and destroy me not, lest God give power over thee to one who will destroy thee. The Marid answered, I must positively kill thee, therefore choose by what manner of death thou wilt die. The fisherman then felt assured of his death, but he again implored, Pardon me by my way of gratitude from my liberating thee. Why, answered the Ifrit, I am not going to kill thee, but for that very reason, because thou hast liberated me. O Sheikh of the Ifrits, said the fisherman, do I act kindly towards thee, and dost thou recompense me with baseness? But the proverb lieth not that saith, We did good to them, and they returned us the contrary, and such by my life is the conduct of the wicked. Thus he who acteth kindly to the undeserving is recompensed in the same manner as the aider of the Umamir. The Ifrit, when he heard these words, answered by saying, Covet not life, for thy death is unavoidable. Then said the fisherman within himself, This is a genie, and I am a man, and God hath given me sound reason. Therefore I will now plot his destruction with my art and reason, like as he hath plotted with his cunning and perfidy. So he said to the Ifrit, Hast thou determined to kill me? He answered, Yes. Then said he, By the most great name engraved upon the seal of Suleiman, I will ask thee one question, and wilt thou answer it to me truly? On hearing the mention of the most great name, the Ifrit was agitated and trembled, and replied, Yes, asked and be brief. The fisherman then said, How wast thou in this bottle? It will not contain thy hand or thy foot. How then can it contain the whole body? Dost thou not believe what I was in it? Said the Ifrit. The fisherman answered, I will never believe thee until I see it in it. Upon this the Ifrit shook and became converted again into smoke, which rose to the sky and then became condensed and entered the bottle by little and little until it was all enclosed. When the fisherman hastily snatched the seal lid and stopper, and having replaced it in the mouth of the bottle, called out to the Ifrit and said, Choose in what manner of death thou wilt die. I will assuredly throw thee into the sea, and build me a house on this spot, and whosoever shall come here, I will prevent his fishing in this place, and I will say to him, Here is an Ifrit, who to any person that liberates him will propose various kinds of death, and then give him a choice. On hearing these words, the Ifrit endeavored to escape, but could not, finding himself restrained by the impression of the seal of Suleiman, and thus imprisoned by the fisherman, as the vilest and the filthiest and the least of the Ifrits. The fisherman then took the bottle to the brink of the sea. The Ifrit exclaimed, "Nay, nay," to which the fisherman answered, "Yeah, without fail, yeah." The Marid then, addressing him with a soft voice and humble manner, said, "What dost thou intend to do with me, O fisherman?" He answered, "I will throw thee into the sea, and if thou hast been there 1,800 years, I will make thee to remain there until the hour of the judgment. Did I not say to thee, spare me, also may God spare thee, and destroy me not, lest God destroy thee? But thou didst reject my petition, and wouldest nothing by treachery. Therefore God hath caused thee to fall into my hand, and I have betrayed thee. Open to me, said the Ifrit, that I may conquer benefits upon thee. The fisherman replied, Thou liest, thou accursed, and I thou art like the wizard of the king Yonan and the sage Toban. What? Said the Ifrit. What was the case of the wizard of the king Yonan and the sage Toban, and what is the story? The fisherman answered as follows. And this is the beginning of another story within a story. Remember, that is the way that Sherazade kind of like keeps up with the stories. This is the story of the king Yonan and the sage Doan. Phew, that was difficult. I really feel that this is gonna be easier in Spanish tomorrow. 100% easier tomorrow. But it will be nice to have these kind of things as vods, you know. Yeah. I think we're gonna read only one more story. And after that story, we're going to go to sleep. Maybe. Because the problem is the next story has another story within the story. Like the story of the king and the sage is basically, it has another story inside. And then there's another story within that story. So there's like two stories within this story. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to read everything of the story of the fisherman. But we're going to try. Storyception is inception indeed. There is one story inside another story. There's many stories.
To be fair, I think if people like the VODs and they find it interesting, I might just record them, and if I record them, I can play them for you as VODs rather than doing this live. So you can have different VODs. But make sure to listen to it when it's nighttime. I think it's better.
Ah, ja.
I'm gonna do the last. I think I'm gonna do the beginning of the story of the King Yonan and the Sage. We'll see how we end up. Okay. Seno. This is the story of the King Yonan and the Sage Doban. Know, O Ifrit, that there was in former times in the country of the Persians a monarch who was called King Yonan, possessing great treasures and numerous forces, valiant and having troops of every description. But he was afflicted with leprosy, which the physicians and sages had failed to remove. Neither their potions, nor powders, nor ointments were of any benefits to him, and none of the physicians was able to cure him. At length there arrived at the city of this king a great sage, stricken in years, who was called the Sage Doban, and he was acquainted with ancient Greek, Persian, modern Greek, Arabic and Syriac books, and with medicine and astrology, both with respect to their scientific principles and the rules of their practical applications for good and evil, as well as the property of plants, dried and fresh, the injurious and the useful. He was versed in the wisdom of the philosophers and embraced a knowledge of all the medical and other science. After this sage had arrived in the city and remained it in a few days, he heard of the case of the king, of the leprosy which God had afflicted him, and that the physicians and men of science had failed to cure him. In consequence of this information, he passed the next night in deep study, and when the morning came and diffused its light, and the sun saluted the ornament of the god, he attired himself in the riches of his apparel and presented himself before the king. Having kissed the ground before him and offered up the prayer for the continuance of his power and happiness, and greeted him in the best manner he was able, he informed him who he was and said, O king, I have heard of the disease which hath attacked thy person, and that many of the physicians are unacquainted with the means of removing it. And I will cure thee without giving thee to drink any potions or any ointments. When King Yonan heard his words, he wondered and said to him, How wilt thou do this? By a life you cure me, I will enrich thee, and thy children's children, and I will heap favors upon thee, and whatever thou shalt desire shall be thine, and thou shalt be my companion and my friend. He then bestowed upon him a robe of honor and other presents, and said to him, Wilt thou cure me of this disease without potions or ointments? He answered, Yes, I will cure thee without any discomfort to thy person. And the king was extremely astonished, and he said, O sage, at what time and on what day shall that which thou hast proposed to me be done? Hasten it, O my son, he answered. I hear and obey. He then went out from the presence of the king and hired a house, in which he deposited his books and medicines and drugs. Having done this, he selected certain of his medicines and drugs and made a golf stick with a hollow handle, into which he introduced them, after which he made a ball for it, skillfully adapted, and on the following day, after he had finished this, he went again to the king and kissed the ground before him, and directed him to repair to the horse course and to play with the ball and the golf stick. The king, attended by his emirs and chamberlains and wizards, went thither, and as soon as he arrived there, the sage Stoban presented himself before him and handed to him the golf stick, saying, Take this golf stick and grasp it thus, and ride along the horse course, and strike the ball with it with all thy force, until the palm of thy hand and thy whole body become moist with perspiration. When the medicine will penetrate into thy hand and pervade thy whole body, and when thou hast done this, and the medicine remains in thee, return to thy palace and enter the bath, and wash thyself and sleep. Then shalt thou find thyself cured, and peace be on thee. So King Yonan took the golf stick from the sage, and grasped it in his hand, and mounted his horse, and the ball was thrown before him, and he urged his horse after it until he overtook it, when he struck it with all his force. And when he had continued this exercise as long as was necessary, and bathed and slept, he looked upon his skin, and not a vestige of the leprosy remained. It was clear as white silver. Upon this he rejoiced exceedingly. His heart was dilated, and he was full of happiness. On the following morning, he entered the council chamber and sat upon his throne, and the chamberlains and great officers of his court came before him. The sage Stoban also presented himself, and when the king saw him, he rose to him in haste and seated him by his side. Services of food were then spread before them, and the sage ate with the king and remained as his guest all the day. And when the night approached, the king gave him 2,000 pieces of gold, besides dresses of honors and other presents, and mounted him on his own horse, and so the sage returned to his house. And the king was astonished at his skills, saying, This man hath cured me by an external process, without anointing me with ointment. By Allah, this is consummate science, and it is incumbent on me to bestow favors and honors upon him, and to make him my companion and familiar friend as long as I live. He passed the night happy and joyful on account of his recovery, and when he arose, he went forth again and sat upon his throne. The officers of his court standing before him, and the emirs and wizards sitting on his right hand and on his left, and he called for the sage Stoban, who came and kissed the ground before him, and the king rose and seated him by his side, and ate with him and greeted him with compliments. He bestowed upon him a robe of honor and other presents, and after conversing with him till the approach of the night, gave orders that the 5 other robes of honor should be given to him. and 1,000 pieces of gold. And the sage departed and returned to his house. Again, when the next morning came, the king went as usual to his council chamber, and the emirs and wizards and chamberlains surrounded him. Now there was among his wizards one of ill aspect, and of evil start, sordid and avaricious, and of an envious and malicious disposition. And when he saw that the king had made the sage Douban his friend, and bestowed upon him these favors, he envied him and meditated evil against him. Agreeably with the adage which saith, there is no void of envy, and another which saith, tyranny lurketh in the soul, power manifesteth, and weakness concealeth it. So he approached the king, and kissed the ground before him, and said, O King of the age, thou art he whose goodness extendeth to all men, and I have an important piece of advice to give thee. If I were to conceal it from thee, I should be a base-born wretch. Therefore, if thou order me to impart it, I will do so. The king, disturbed by those words of the wizard, said, Why is thy advice? He answered, O glorious king, it hath been said by the now ancients, he who looketh not to results, fortune will not attend him. Now I have seen the king in a way that is not right, since he hath bestowed favors upon his enemy, and upon him who desired the downfall of his dominion. He hath treated him with kindness, and honored him with the highest honors, and admitted him to the closest intimacy. I therefore fear for the king the consequences of this conduct. At this the king was troubled, and his countenance changed, and he said, Who is he whom thou regardest as mine enemy, and to whom I shew kindness? He replied, O king, if thou hast been sleep awake. I allude to the sage Douban. The king said, He is my intimate companion, and the dearest of men in my estimation, for he restored me by a thing that I merely held in my hand, and cured me of my disease, which the physicians were unable to remove, and there is not now to be found one like to him in the whole world, from the west to the east. Wherefore then dost thou utter these words against him? I will from this day appoint him a regular salary and maintenance, and give him every month 1,000 pieces of gold, and if I gave him a share of my kingdom, it were but a small thing to do unto him. I do not think that thou hast said this from any other motive than of envy. If I did what thou desirest, I should repent after it, and the man repented who killed his parrot. And at this point, the king starts the story of the husband and the parrot, which is not a long story, it's like a small one. There was a certain merchant of an excessively jealousy disposition, having a wife endowed with perfect beauty, who had prevented him from leaving his home. But an event happened which obliged him to make a journey, and when he found his doing so to be indispensable, he went to the market in which birds were sold, and bought a parrot, which he placed in his house to act as a spy, so in his return she might inform him of what passed during his absence. So this parrot was cunning and intelligent, and he remembered whatever he heard. When he had made his journey, and accomplish his business, he returned and caused the parrot to be brought to him, and asked her respecting the conduct of his wife. She answered, "Thy wife has a lover who visited her every night during my absence." And when the man heard this, he fell into a violent rage and went to his wife and gave her a severe beating. The woman imagined that one of the female slaves had informed him of what has passed between her and her paramour during his absence. She therefore called them together and made them swear, and they all swore that they had not told their master anything of the matter, but confessed that they had heard the parrot relate to him what had passed. Having thus established of the testimony of the slaves the fact of the parrot's having informed her husband of her intrigue, she ordered one of the slaves to grind with a hand mill under the cage, another one to sprinkle water from above, and a third one to move a mirror from side to side during the next night on which her husband was absent. And on the following morning, when the man returned from an entertainment at which he had been present, and inquired again the parrot, he answered, "O my master, I could neither see nor hear anything on account of the excessive darkness and thunder and the lightning and rain. Now this happened during the summer." So he said to her, "What strange words are these? It is now summer, when nothing of what thou hast described ever happens." The parrot, however, swore by Allah the Great that what she had said was true, and that it had so happened, upon which the man, not really understanding the case and not knowing the plot, became violent in rage, and he took out the bird from the cage and threw her down upon the ground with such violence that he killed her. But after some days, one of his female slaves informed him of the truth, yet he would not believe it until he saw his wife's paramour going out from his house, when he drew his sword and slew the traitor by a blow on the back of his neck. So also did he to his treacherous wife, and thus both of them went laden with the sin which they had committed to the fire. And the merchant discovered that the parrot had informed him truly of what she had seen, and he mourned grievously for her loss. When the wizard heard the words of the king Yonan, he said, "O king of the great dignity, what hath this crafty sage, this man from whom naught but mischief proceedeth, done unto me, that I should be his enemy, and speak evil of him, and plot with thee to destroy him? I have informed thee respecting him in compassion for thee, and in fear of his despoiling thee of thy happiness. And if my words be not true, destroy me, as the wizard of Sindibad was destroyed." The king asked, "How was that?" And the wizard thus answered. And this is the beginning of the wizard story, the story of the envious wizard and the prince and the golem. And we are going to leave it there. Wow. That was difficult. We're gonna leave it there because it's too much. Are you going to continue tomorrow? I'll probably continue tomorrow in Spanish. Oh, hello. Welcome. Welcome to the night of the reading. Welcome, Nia. Thank you for the raid. Today is a quiet night. We need to be quiet. We need to be relaxed. Today is a real good night to, just chill. Welcoming all of the raiders. If you don't know who I am Reina Ronronea from Globie's first generation. And today I was testing my reading skills in English by reading 1001 Nights stories in English. However, because reading while you whisper is really hard on the throat, I was already finishing. But I really appreciate Nia, and thank you so much for the raid. And I hope that you have a really good stream, and I hope that you had a very, very chill day, and that you shall have as well a very relaxing night. Just so you know, tomorrow we are gonna be continuing reading, but this time we are going to be reading in my native language. We are going to be reading in Spanish, which is gonna be a lot easier for me, I think. I have more practice, So if any of you speak Spanish and wants to listen to the stories of Sherazade, the princess that got away with not being killed by a king because she was very clever, then please do come tomorrow and we shall read together. We will continue with the story of the envious wizard and the prince and the woollet. I do need to find in the Spanish book what it is, because the Spanish book that I have has the different stories, and this story might not be in that book because 1001 Nights had the stories basically placed in an order, but in this book that I found in Spanish, they just picked different stories and they took them out from the main frame, and they placed them and they collected them, so they are not in order. But that's what we're gonna do tomorrow. Let me just I just need to lower the volume for a second. It's translating real time? No way. So I'm really sorry to all of the raiders, but we are going to move into somewhere else. I am gonna take you somewhere else. Hopefully you can chill and enjoy. We are going to be going to... Wow, is there anybody live at the moment? Oh, Edu is live. I think we can go to Edu. We're gonna go to a very, very cute cyber angel. So I hope you enjoy. She's very cute. Thank you so much for today. we will read tomorrow, and then on the day, on Friday, we are back with members, and on Saturday, we are back with karaoke. Thank you so much. And I hope that you have a good night. Good night, everyone. Good night. Good night. Good night. Night night. Night night. Good night. Good night. Good night, everyone. Good night.